Hello everyone and welcome to another wire wrap video tutorial. My name is Jim McIntosh, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how you can make a nice ring with two stones. And that's the unique thing about it. It gives you an opportunity to put two stones on there that complement one another. And you'll see how we do that as we're making this. But really think about how you could use different colors of the stone, the two stones, to make something really unique. And I'm sure your customers are really going to love this. I can only imagine how people are going to react as they're going through the jewelry in your booth and they come across this beautiful two-stone ring. I think you're really going to like making this because it's going to really turn people's heads. So if you're ready, let's head to the bench and we'll get started. So just to give you an idea as to what we're going to be doing, we're going to be setting these two stones. It's very similar to the way we did this single stone. It's going to be two halves. We'll make two separate settings. There's a couple of extra wires in here that I'll show you how to incorporate in here. But this is great. It will accommodate larger stones. You could think of doing maybe this size stone for one side of this. You could use round stones or oval shaped stones in this setting. They all work really well. Just let your imagination run wild with this. But this is a great little piece, nice little stone ring to make. It would look really good on your table as you're selling your work. It would look really great on a website as well, especially if you're using some really nice, unique stones. So this is a great little project. So if you're ready, let's go. So before we get started, I wanted to go over a few of the tools that we're going to need for this project. We'll need wire cutters, obviously, so that we can get the wire off the spool, as well as make some trims on the wire here and there. So just some side cutters will work really well. So something to cut the wire with. Also, you'll need either a flat nose pliers or these. These are WrapMaker pliers, and you've seen me use these in many of my other videos. These really help make the wrap so much easier to do. And it makes a nice, good, tight wrap, a firm wrap on this. And it really helps start the wrap as well. And you can pick up a pair of these over at my website. I'll put the address right here, but you can also find the address to where you can purchase these in the description as well. And as well as if you head over there, you can also see a video on how to use these. Really handy little tool to have. So WrapMaker pliers. Since we are making a ring, we'll need a ring mandrel. And this is a steel ring mandrel. I have a steel one because it's easier to shape around a steel one. Many people may have a hollow plastic one, and those don't give you the resistance that the steel does, or even a hard wood. You can use a nice wooden ring mandrel as well. They both work really well. I just happen to have a steel one. Now, if you don't have a ring mandrel, you can use many other things to form that ring shape. You can get a dowel from one of those big box hardware stores. You can use some other round object you may have in your home. You can even get a basic shape from this. We're going to be using a fine tip permanent marker in this. So this part of the marker will work really well for at least giving you some sort of a round shape. Okay, but we'll be using this. We'll be using a nice fine tip permanent marker. I like a fine tip just to make it easier to make a mark. You'll need a hand file, a flat hand file. The hand file I prefer is one that has the filing edge on its side as well. So it's got a filing edge on all four sides. And you'll see as we make this ring why that's important. You'll also need something to measure with, so I'll be using my handy dandy tape measure, or for my finer ones I'll be using this smaller flat ruler. And you'll also need something to shape the ring band against this ring mandrel. And you'll notice that's why I have this steel one, is because it gives me the resistance, so I can really hit it with this rawhide mallet. So a rawhide mallet will come in handy. And one other thing that we may use is a chasing hammer. And this is my flat chasing hammer. And I may use that here and there. We'll have to see where we'll need it. I may not even use this, but as we go along, we'll learn more about that as well. So those are just the tools to the project. So let's continue on to the next section. So here we're going to talk a little bit, before we start really getting into this, is about the stones I'm using. Now I'm using 2 teardrop shaped stones. This one's slightly larger than this one. This one is about a 20 millimeter. Let me double check. I believe it's about, yeah, it's about 20 millimeters. This one is about 18 millimeters long. I'm talking length. These are small stones, and you're going to see me, they're going to see them sliding all over the place. You can use 2 stones that are both 20 millimeters. You can use, you can pretty much try it and goof off with it with just about any size stone. I would tend to recommend that you use maybe something longer. This is about as wide as I'd really want to get on a stone like this, and that's looks like it's about 18 millimeters wide. That's really kind of the width I would really stick with. I wouldn't go too much further than that. And a little bit longer would be fine. You could get 220s or 225s in the length, but you want to use an oval shaped stone, maybe one that does come to a point, and it could come to a point at either end. This will work, the setup will work either way. But I'm going to be using these 2, and they're going to sit on the ring just like that. And we'll start with the big one first, and then we'll go to the small one. And the reason why I want you to start with the big one first, if you do have them that are 2 different sizes, just to get you used to the stone and doing everything with it. So we're going to cut 2 pieces of wire. This is just like the single stone ring we did in the other video. We're going to cut 2 pieces of 18 gauge square wire at 5 inches each. And these are going to make up just a set of the prongs as well as the shank. So again, we will put them together at one end, make them nice and even and flat, and then we will tape the ends together, and you can finish smoothing it out after you get them taped together. And then we'll put them on a ring mandrel, and we will shape the stone again, or shape the ring shank rather. Now again, I am making a size 6. Oops, skipped a part here. Let's go ahead and find the middle of these also while we're at it. Usually the reason why I skip that is because a lot of times I end up kind of just eyeballing it, but that's not the best practice, people. Not the best practice. So we're going to mark the center just so we know where it's at. So it's at 2.5. There. All right. Now we can pull out the ring mandrel, and you can center that mark that you just made over the size 6. Hold it with your thumb, and then bring both sides around the mandrel to make a nice loop. Cross over one another, so I'll show you what we got here. This is what we've got on the opposite side. Okay, so set your mandrel aside just for a second, and you're going to want to make it, just pinch it together just to make it a little bit smaller. And you can also, yes, there we go. Okay, and you also remember we want both sides to be kind of even, so they're kind of even. If they're not, you need to hold the side that's too long and then roll the ring shank towards that, and then bend to this one so that they're nice and straight. So now that I've messed this up, let's fix it there so that mine are now even. They look pretty close. All right, take the tape off. Now you should have 2 rings that are about the size 6. And we're going to bend these outward just like we did the last one. We're going to position something you want to make sure you do is make sure your wire's squared up. Mine is not. This side it's just on its edge there. All right. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to put it where they cross over one another. Put my pliers, and I'm going to bend it outward. And I'll do the same thing with this one right there where they come together. I will bend it outward. One. So now that I got the two sides bent outward, I'm going to bring the ends together, and I'm going to take a piece of tape, and I'm going to put a piece of tape here at the ends, just like that. And now let's do the same thing with this one. We will find where they come to this, they meet up here in the center. I'm going to bend that one outward, and then I'm going to position my pliers here, and I'm going to bend this one outward so that they meet up. See, this is the same setup as the single stone ring that we did on the main channel. And now we're going to bring these two ends together, and we will make a flag. So now we should have two pieces very similar to the same thing we just did on the main page. Okay? But with this one, we're going to need two sets of prongs. So that means we need more wire. So get your 18 gauge wire. And now we're going to cut two more pieces of wire. And we're going to cut them at 2.5. No, let's cut them at 3 because I am terrible at math. So let's say 2 more, or actually 4 more at 3 inches. Excuse me. So 4 more. We have 2 prongs on each side. So there's 2 of them. And then here is number 3. 1 more will make number 4. There we go. So 4 wires at 3 inches each. So here we have 4 wires that we've cut at 3 inches each, and these are going to make up the prongs that go on the other side. So take them in groups of 2, and I want you to straighten them out. And then we're going to tape these 2 sides together. So let me grab some tape. 1. So now that we've got these 2 sides evened up, take a piece of tape and lay it across the 2 of them and make a flag. And then we will start from the flag and we'll work our way to the other end, straightening as we go, keeping them nice and flat. And we will put another piece of tape. So that's 1 set. And we'll do the same thing on this second set. Straighten it out. Put a piece of tape. Go to the other end. And put a second flag here. Piece of tape. Okay, so we should have 2 sets of these now. So now you have 2 sets of additional prong wires, and then 2 sets of the main prong and the ring shank. Okay, and we're going to bundle these in 2s because we're going to work on them separately, because since these 2 stones are different sizes, the measurements for each section of this is going to be slightly different. It's all going to be based on the stone. Okay, so let's start with the big one first, and that's this one. So we said that this was 20 millimeters long, and you want the end of your stone, this end portion here, you want it to be just here at the end of these prong wires. You want that back end to be right there. You don't want it to overlap or anything, you just want it right there. Okay, so that's where our measurements are going to be based from. Let me flatten this a little bit. There we go. So we're going to base it from this spot here. So if I were to measure from here to here 20 millimeters, that would be the length of the stone. Now we want to make a cut and wrap section on here that is really rather small. If this is 20 millimeters, now normally I would say I would make a wrap area of approximately 10 millimeters or half the size of the stone. In this case, that's not a good idea. In this case, what we want to do is we want to actually make a cut and wrap area that's about half that, or about 5 millimeters. So what we want to do is we want to find the center of our stone and put it on here. So I've got this lifted up a little bit. You can set it on something so that you can just get to those prong wires. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the center. So we said it was 20 millimeters, so I'm going to mark the center at 10. And then I'm going to center this at 2.5 millimeters. Right there. And I'm going to do a line at 5 millimeters, and then I will do a line at 0. That is going to be the cut and wrap area for this. Why? Because our stone is longer. Let me kind of show you here. So if we were to set the stone next to it, and we were to put this at the edge where this is, see, notice this now corresponds with the center of the stone. And that's what we want, because we want these prongs long enough to be able to move out to here. Now, we're going to do the same thing. Let me set this aside. We're also going to make a cut and wrap area on here that's 5 millimeters. Now, we cut these at 3 inches. So I'm going to find the center. That's 1.5. Make a mark. And then I'm going to center this at 2.5, just like I did over there. Now you're going to have extra wire, and it's going to seem like you've got a lot of wire here. And the reason why is because it's easier to work with this extra wire. It's easier to move things around. You could have cut these at 2 inches. When you get more used to making this type of ring, you can do that. But what we want to do now is we want to take our file and we want to cut these center sections. So I'm going to start with the first one, and I'm going to cut this center section. Now I'm using a hand file. If this center section is smaller than your hand file on its edge, then use a needle file to do this. So I'm just going to cut that groove into here. Just take my time and cut. Remember, I set this on its edge, and then I will give it a push to make a groove where I made my mark, and then I will file that width out. Let's do the same thing over here. I just like to kind of make sure I get the two sides even. And this takes some doing, so just take your time. Okay. And now we'll do the same thing with this one. Oops. You know what I did forget to do is I did forget to put a piece of tape across on the outside of each of those. So let's do that right quick. So to make this more stable and easier, we're going to put tape here just outside of the wrap area, the cut area that we're going to be doing. That just stabilizes the two wires together. And now that we've got those, we can go ahead and we can just file across there. I'm going to make my little edge into it. I'll do the same thing over here. Just take your time. Okay, so I've just got this done. Okay, so you want to take the tape off on this, and we're going to do exactly the same thing on the second set as well, but you're going to notice here in a second why I said you didn't need so much tape or so much wire, because this is going to be kind of much bigger, much longer than the other one. Okay, so now that we've got all the tape removed, what you want to do is you want to line up the cut areas in these shorter wires with the cut area on the ring shank. So I got that one, and we're putting these on the outside of this. Okay, so that these additional prong wires are on the outside. Once you get that, take a piece of tape and make a flag across all 4 of these. I'm doing this, I'm able to get it in there close to that. And now we'll do it here towards the ends, and I'll show you what it looks like. Let me pull this tape off here. Okay, so we're going to just put it right here to bring all 4 of these together. There we go. All right, so there's our cut area right here, and we're going to wrap these together. So just kind of make sure they're flat and where you want them. Take a piece of 18 gauge half round wire, and we're going to wrap the center area. So this 18 gauge, you don't need very much, maybe about 4 inches, because this is a very small 5mm wrap area. So line up your wire wrap pliers with where you want to do your wrap at. Insert the end of the wrap wire and bring it around. And as you bring it around, be sure that you kind of give it a pull so that all 4 of those wires pull in together, because they will have a tendency to be pulled apart. So there's 1, here's 2, 3, and I think we can probably get just a 4th one on there. So there we go. So there's 4 wraps on there. And something else you can do is you may notice that your first one's not quite as tight. If you undo it and pull, that will bring it all back in. And now we're going to set this into place. And then we're going to trim off these ends. And we will set them down into place really well. There we go. And now you should be able to remove all this tape that is holding all of this together. You're going to go through a lot of tape here, even though they're small pieces, but this tape really helps to hold everything together, and so you don't have to fiddle with wires so much. Okay, so now we got all the tape off. Now we can check and see just how close to the middle is. So I've got my stone sitting on its top, and I'm going to set this so that the ring shank is right at the end of the stone. So now notice, pretty close to the center. You want to try and get that as close to the center as you possibly can. So now that I've got it there, I can take these prong wires and I can separate them out at a 45-degree angle, and these other outside wires at 45-degree angle as well. Now, that's a little bit more than 45. You got another thing you need to think about, and that is you've got these 2 extra wires. Now, a lot of times all I will do is cut them. I'll bend them outward like I do the prongs, so I'll make sure they kind of mimic the prongs. And then I will cut them short and trim them. And I'll show you how to do that on the other one. But on this particular one, since the stone's just slightly larger, I'm actually going to use those as additional prongs. just because I think it would look nice on this particular piece. So I've got 4 prongs at the bottom, and I'll have 2 prongs here at the top. So I'm going to center this on here. Then I'm going to take a piece of tape, and I'm going to tape like I always do. I'm going to tape the setting to the stone so we can draw out where the ends of the prongs are. So here we go. Actually, sometimes it's just better just to stick this on there. Okay. And then center it on the piece. Center it on the stone, should I say. So now that we got it centered here on the stone, we will push the tape onto it, and that kind of captures it. And we'll tape the stone here. There we go. So the stone and the setting are all taped together, and we'll just kind of work it around to where we want it. I'm going to move it down just a bit here. Okay, and then we'll just separate your prongs to where you want them. Oh, the top is off. See, so it just takes a second just to kind of get everything centered how you want it. Once you get everything set up, you can take your Sharpie and just mark the prong ends where they come out from the stone. And we'll do the top ones, make sure they're in the right spot. Careful not to mark your stone. You want to mark the wire, not the stones. All right. Now you can remove the tape from here. There we go. And take it off the stone as well. And we'll have 5. Since I'm using all of these, we should have 6 spots here. And I'm just going to start bending these away from the shank. So we'll bend it upward there, and we'll bend it upward there, 90 degrees. Same thing here. Get this last bottom one and bend it there. Now for the top ones. There's the top one. And grab this last one here. Make sure I'm in the right spot. Yep, there we go. Okay. So that should be our prong wires. This is what we have. Looks like just a crazy spider, doesn't it? So you set the stone in there. There we go. And you should be able to just start pushing these wires, these prong wires, up over the stone. And you might have to trim as you go, because some of them, I'm going to trim these a little bit shorter, just to get them out of the way, because we're going to run out of room. So I'm just, this is not the final height of these, but I'm just trimming them shorter, just to get those bottom ones out of the way, so I can maneuver the top ones now. And we'll move that one there, and we will put that one there, and that should hold the stone in pretty well. Okay, very good. And then let's just trim these guys short too before we start trimming them all the way down, because we're going to actually get these to where we can trim them and shape the ends how we want them. So I'm going to look at this look at this and see where I've got everything and make just some adjustments. And then I'm going to start trimming them short. I'm going to trim them a couple of millimeters above the stone. And then we will and again, it's better to cut too long than to cut too short. You cut them too short, you can't add wire. But cut them too long, you can always take wire away. And then the top ones, do the same thing here. That one might still be just a touch too long. There. And then the last one. There we go. So now I'm going to remove the stone. I'm going to open the top prongs because I got a lot of prongs at the bottom of this. So I'm going to just open up these top prongs and pull this apart. Let's move our extra wire away. Now I'm just going to use my Dremel tool and I'm going to shape each one of these. I'm going to do that off camera so you guys don't get so bored, but we just want to make a nice curve. And again, you can use a pair of, not a pair of, but a flat needle file to do that as well. Whatever you have. So here we go. Okay, so that's pretty good on these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check them out. I'm not going to final set the stone because we're also going to wrap this together like we did the last one as well. But I just want to make sure that everything's still fitting and everything's in the right place, and it looks like it is, and those prongs are going to look good. So we can set this aside now, and we can now concentrate on this second half. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to measure this. I remember I said my stone for this side was 18 millimeters. Half of 18 is 9 millimeters. So we're going to measure that down the length of this. We're going to make a mark, and then we're going to make a 5 millimeter wide cut and wrap area. So I'm going to bring this here to the edge. Bring it here to the edge. So we said it was 18, so we're going to make this at 9. And then from there we're going to do a 2.5 millimeters. Center it at 2.5. And then we'll make a 0 and a 5. There. So there's our cut and wrap area. And we'll do the same thing on here. Bring this back me as well. We're going to find the center of this 3 inches of wire. So actually that won't work. I thought it would, but it won't. So we'll find the center of this, and that is 1.5 inches because this is a 3 inch. So mark that there, and then we will center this at 2.5. And we'll do the mark at the 0 and at the 5 millimeter. There's our cut and wrap area for both of those. We'll take pieces of tape, and we will tape these, and then we'll file them. And I'm not going to bore you with filing these again, so we'll do all that off camera. From there. Now, before moving on, I want you to double check to make sure that this is in the right spot. So the last thing we need is this tiny stone being in the wrong spot. So look, it looks like the stone is in the right spot. The cut and wrap area, should I say, is pretty close to the right spot. So we should be good there. So pull out a 4-inch piece of 18 gauge half round. Position your wire wrap pliers here at the beginning of your wrap. insert the wire and make 4 or 5 wraps here. Probably going to only make 4. So, and again, bringing the bundle together, pulling it together so that it all comes in. Here is number 4. Okay. And we're making this wrap smaller because, obviously, because we have a smaller stone. Okay, so flatten it, set it in place so that it doesn't move, and then trim off your excess wrap wire. And we'll do this here, trim off this side, very good. We'll set these down flat. There we go. So those should be good. You can take this tape off. Move your prong wires out 45 degrees to where you want them, approximately. Now, this was the part that I was talking about. So, since this is such a short stone, see if we set this here, it really doesn't have, there's really not a lot of space here at the bottom of this stone to put 4 prong wires like we did on this one. See, this one we put 4 because it's a little bit bigger stone. This side doesn't have that as much. So what I generally do is I will take these and I will move them out with those prong wires that I have on the outside so that I put some tension here on the wrap, because I want these to not move out of place. So I will kind of bend them where I want them with the other wrap. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to trim these kind of short so that they don't show. So you may have to move them out of the way because you don't want to trim both of those wires. But I just trimmed that wire so short. It's got to be about 2 or 3 millimeters here. And I'm going to do the same thing over here on this side. I'm going to kind of move it down out of the way, and then I'm going to trim that wire. Then I'm going to take my Dremel with my polishing wheel on it, and I'm just going to just hit this a couple of times to kind of round those edges off. Okay, that way, I do that. You can use a file too. If you just file that, just blunt a little bit, it's going to prevent it from cutting into somebody. Okay. Now we have to set the stone, and we're going to again. Actually, I want to just double check to make sure I've got this in the right spot once again. This just makes it a little easier. Okay, so we do. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that everything was where it needed to be. Perfect, we're there. So we need to take this, and we need to set the stone down here in front of us. And we're going to take our setting, and we're going to put a piece of tape across the wrap in the middle. Just like that. And then we're going to set this ever so gently on here, centering it. Once we get it centered, we're going to stick it to the stone, and then we're going to pick everything up and get this onto our stone really well, just so we can mark our prongs. There we go. All right, now double check, make sure they're where you want them. Make sure everything's centered how you want it, and then take your fine tip permanent marker and make your marks. There's one there. Here's prong number 2, prong 3, and then prong 4 right there. Okay, you can remove remove the tape from the stone and then bend your prongs how you want them. Remember, we're going to bend them away from the shank 90 degrees. So we've got our wire wrap pliers here, and we're just going to put them outside of that mark. Give them a nice gentle bend. I've got tape all over me now. Look at me. Look at me. I'm a mess. All right. And we'll do the same thing with this one. And number 3. And then number 4. Number 4 always seems to be the one that is in the trickiest spot, I guess. Okay, and then just straighten them out a little bit. And then set your stone in, and your stone should sit where you want it. And then bring the wires. Now, I generally would like to start here at the bottom and bring the wires over the stone. And then see what I got. Okay, and then push these top ones over. I got a lot of wire here, so we're going to trim some of this back so we can see what we're doing. Just shooting silver wire everywhere. Look at me go. Okay, that's a little better. So push these down. There. Okay, so now if we take the two sides, see, now we've got the two sides where we want them. If I were to put this stone back in, just to kind of show you what we got. There. So that's what we have so far. So what we need to do is we need to trim these prongs down on this smaller stone, and we need to shape them. So I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and then we'll be back and I'll show you the next step in this. We're going to join these two halves together. So before we move on, we got to make sure that these two sides are about the same size. We want them just over about a size 6, and you want to just give them some shape. Straighten them out a little bit if they need to be. I'm just putting them on my ring mandrel here, and I'm just going to tap the shape into it. Just make sure it kind of harden it a little bit. And then we'll do the same thing over here with the first half we did. We will tap some of that back in. There. Now, we're going to take the two sides that we have and we're going to put them together and we're going to match them up. Just like this. So here we've got them matched up. And we're going to take another piece of tape. And we're going to do just as we did in the first one. We're going to tape these two sides together at the bottom. So now we have them taped together, or we have them centered onto one another. And I'm just going to take a piece of this tape and I'm going to put it across them. And I'm going to bring it, and I'm just doing this little bottom section of this, and I'm just going to bring the tape around to the other side. Just, all I want to do is, I just want to hold them steady in this together, and you're going to have to kind of, there. Now, I am going to actually, the first one I used a very small wrap wire. I used some 22 gauge half round. This particular one, I'm actually going to use some of this 18 gauge. Now, here's the reason why. So I want to show you guys the difference between the two. so you can make your own informed decision as to what you want to do. So with the stone out, I'm going to wrap these two sides together, and I'm going to start here on, just pick a side. I'm going to start right here. Now I'm going to start away from the settings just a little bit because it's going to be easier to get this. And as I do about 3 or 4 wraps, I'll slide it up towards the top. But I've got my setup here. I'm going to bring it around like I have been, and I'm going to push it through the center, grab it on the other side, and then I'm just going to start wrapping it. Okay, there's one. Let me send through number 2. Oops. Let me send through number 2 here. And as I remember, as I'm doing this, I'm pulling these two halves together, and then I'm going to just do number 3. There's number 3, and then I'll show you. I'm just going to push it. So there's our 3rd wrap. So I want to take this and I want to push it up towards the top. Oh, something moved here. All right. So we want to push this up toward the top of this setting and then set it into place. You may have to push it up past these prongs. So just work them all the way up there. I got it. It just kind of did it itself. And once I have that, I want to pinch these together and set that wrap into place. Be careful that all you're doing is smashing those wraps and not anything else, and then just keep going until you're all the way around, just like on the other single prong ring that we just made. Okay, so I'm going to do this all off camera because I know this is going to get tedious and boring, but when I'm done, or when I'm towards the end, I'll come back on and I'll show you what we've got. Alright, just about done. I only got a couple more to do that I kind of want to kind of sneak in here. And I want to finish this underneath, at the inside of the ring shank. So I think I'm going to do one more. I think I can get one more in there. Yeah, that's good. So that's about even. Both sides are in this right spot. So what to do with these wrap ends? Now, I personally like to hide them inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a hole and I'm going to work the end. This is the first end. This is the first where I started. And I'm going to bring it up in through. And I'm just going to set it on the inside here, and then I'm going to cut it short. That way it's hidden, and I'm just going to push this end down against there. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one, except for I'm going to cut it short first. I'm going to kind of cut it a little bit shorter just so I can loop it in there. So we're going to just kind of make a little hook and loop it, push it in, and then turn it over and grab it. Did I get it all the way through? No, I didn't. It's kind of, there it is. There we go. And I'm going to just kind of find a nice spot to set it and trim that one short. There. There we go. So this is the wrapped shank. It's a little bit larger wire than I normally put on here. it works great. It really does make it very strong too. So that's a kind of a plus, is that it does make it strong. I'm just gonna do a final set here. Flip it around, and we'll that should be a nice strong ring. Straighten it out just a little bit. Now all we have left is to set the stones and polish it up a bit. Now if you are going to polish this up, I'm not going to show you how to polish it, but I would polish it before I put the stones in. So I would put the buff on my rotary tool, and I would go through and I would clean all of this up. The reason being, to do it before you set the stones, first of all, the buffing wheel can damage the stone, leave some dark marks. I'm using a white stone, or a light colored stone. These are ocean jasper that I'm using. The other reason is you'll be able to get into all these little nooks and crannies a lot easier if the stones are not inside of the setting. Okay, so think of it that way. But so just to facilitate what we're doing here, I'm just going to set these stones now. There we go. Okay, make sure your prongs are in the right spots. This one kind of moved out of the way, and they'll do that as you're wrapping. And I'm going to set these top ones on this large stone, so push it over the stone. And I'll do the same thing here, as I will push it over the stone. And then these bottom guys, I will set each one of these guys into place, and then we'll kind of play around with them and figure out where exactly we want them at. If they are in the right place, or if they need to be moved or adjusted in some way. And yeah, we got a little bit of adjusting we have to do here at the top. And this one, he needs to come down just a touch. We'll reset him. There. Okay, and then let's do the smaller stone. I'm going to put the point in first. And we're going to push the point, push this towards the point. Actually, let's set the bottom first, because this one's sitting a little deep in the pointed area. So why don't we set those points first? So we'll push it all the way up to where we want it, and we'll make it just a slight adjustment here, and then push the prongs. These are slippery little stones here, these ones. Plus I've got these big, giant, fat hands that only want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. So they don't always cooperate with what I'm doing. I'm concentrating very hard. And I want to bend him towards the middle. Very good. And then the last two are these top ones. These, since everything's all crowded up here, we're going to have to kind of wiggle our way in there. And there's that one. That popped out just slightly. It slid out. So let's attack this from the other angle. We have to get something in there to move him. There we go. There. Wasn't that kind of an interesting tutorial? I really enjoy how you can take those two different stones and really kind of mix and match them to come up with something really interesting. And I'm sure that now that I've showed you the basics of it, I'm sure you've got plenty of ideas as to how you can push this design even further. I suggest trying to practice a bit with some larger stones, maybe some longer stones as well. Stones that really kind of take up that space down the length of somebody's finger. This is one of those tutorials, I think, that can really turn people's heads and really make them think twice when they come to your booth about buying something. They'll really want this. They won't walk away empty-handed, trust me. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new here, please make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell also, just to make sure that you get all the alerts, and also share this with all of your friends. There's a lot of people out there that are just discovering this channel, and if you could help them find the channel even easier, that would be awesome. So share it with all your friends. So again, my name is Jim McIntosh, and I want to say what I always say because it's so true. Don't forget, practice, practice, practice.